Hi, everyone. So today I'm doing an interview um, with Tan- Tangerine Spoonie. That's how you say that word. Um, for those new, this video is part of my Actively Tired project, which focuses on disabled people being able to talk about like things with disability with the disabled community, since a lot of misinformation seems to come from non-disabled people talking over disabled people. So yeah, could you introduce yourself, name, pronouns, any other thing you want to like introduce at the beginning about?
Yeah, of course. I'm Atlanta, also known as Tangerine Spoonie on Instagram. I use that to document my health journey and raise awareness around disability and chronic illness as much as I can, I suppose. It's just a place for me to find community, I suppose. It's been a really helpful place. Um, I don't really know what else to say. Um, Sorry, I'm gonna apologise firstly if I get brain fog during
No,
any of
you're
this.
good.
I'm also COVID positive at the minute, so not feeling good.
You're good. You're good. Do you want me to pause?
um, no, it's okay. It's cool. Yeah, so I use my Instagram to document my health and stuff. That's about it, I suppose.
And your
So
pronouns?
pronouns you said and stuff. That's she they.
Cool. Thank you. So talking about your Instagram account, because this is how I first, found out about you and what like made me really interested in it. So can you talk about like what was the process of starting that Instagram account? And like I know you have various different posts. So like I was wondering if you talk me through, how you got from detailing your health journey and how that includes sometimes things that are very specific, like, hey, here's a specific moment in time, and sometimes you have more educational posts.
So how it started, I think I can't even remember how old my account is now. Sometime last year, I started it. Um, I was feeling really lost with diagnoses and looking for health answers and just not really having anyone around me who completely understood. I mean, my mum is also disabled, so she's been a major help. She understands a lot. She's a big inspiration to me and helped me majorly through all of this. But there's an aspect of wanting to speak to people your own age and people who have the same conditions as you and wanting to reach out. So that was really important to me. And the spreading awareness as well. It wasn't something I was really finding when I was looking for chronic illness accounts. It was a lot of health documentation, which is okay. Obviously, it's okay. I share my health. I overshare my health so much on Instagram, but raising the awareness, that's an important side to me as well. There's a lot that isn't spoken about and should be. And like you said, it's a lot of non-disabled people speaking over, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing in talking about having people your age and talking about chronic illness, because it's true. A lot of the resources you find about chronic illness is often like they are more for like older adults or like faith-based, and it can be really difficult, when you're dealing with this. And I think chronic pain and various chronic illnesses is one of those things that it's really hard to understand if you don't have it, just because of that. So uh I wanted to ask if you're comfortable sharing with us uh the like various diagnoses you have.
It is very complicated at the minute. So, um, I've been a chronic migraine sufferer since I was 8 years old. Um, I've been collecting various chronic illness diagnoses over the year, but this month I found out that it's likely I have mitochondrial disorder, which is kind of a genetic mutation thing. So it's been a long time of waiting for these answers, and I'm still not close, but yeah, it's very confusing. But one of my most prominent diagnoses is orthostatic intolerance and inappropriate sinus tachycardia, or dysautonomia, as most people know it, which
uh,
I like to raise awareness for a lot, that one, because it's not spoken about so much as POTS, if you know, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Um, another form of dysautonomia. I feel like the other forms, such as the criteria I fit under, they're not spoken about as much.
Yeah. Would you be willing to give like a brief definition on that, or like what that is for people to like understand more, have that
Yeah.
awareness?
So, in short explanation, when I stand up, my blood pressure falls and my heart rate rises, which can cause me to faint or go into pre-syncope, which is kind of fainting, but not completely losing consciousness. It causes a heap load of symptoms.
All right, I was not, sorry, brain thing. It's fine. Fog also exists. So, so your username is Tangerine Spoonie and stuff. And so for those not aware, like spoonie is a term when looking at the spoon theory. Would you like to explain the spoon theory briefly?
Yeah, this is something that I feel I really need to do a post on my Instagram, because I get a lot of people asking what a spoonie is, and then I'm like, oh, I haven't actually explained this to anyone. My username just seems like a complete mystery. Um, a spoonie is someone who has chronic illness. It's a way to kind of pace yourself throughout the day. You can give yourself a certain amount of spoons and use them as kind of when you're doing an activity, so you're not wasting too much energy. I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah, because this was originally, I forget the original person, but she had been in a diner and she was talking with her friend about like trying to be like, still having a chronic illness, like different things require different amounts of spoons too. So like for people unaware, like doing something like getting up and getting dressed, that might be 1 spoon, but like going to work or school all day might be 3 spoons. And so,
Yeah,
balancing that is important, because if not, like that's how you can feel really overwhelmed. So so what does it mean to you being a spoonie, or like using that label? Like what does that mean to you?
I've always found it a really helpful way to pace myself with symptoms. I know there's a lot of debate around it in the chronic illness community, of people saying it can restrict you with your pacing, and some people don't have the same levels, but it's kind of take it with a pinch of salt sort of thing. People's spoons vary, everybody's different. I mean, like you said, one person getting out of bed, that might cost 1 spoon, but another person that could cost the full three. It's up to the person, I suppose, how you identify with it. But I've just found it a really helpful way to pace myself and make sure that I'm not personally overdoing myself.
Yeah, because that is important, because it can be really hard when people who, like you said, a lot of people seem to not know what a spoonie is or know the spoon theory offhand. So it can be really hard to explain to people, no, like this is when I'm like, wow, I had a doctor's appointment that basically wipes my entire day. Like
Oh yeah.
um
There's a meaning behind it. I'm not just a really big fan of spoons.
yeah, I mean like, oh, you just like oranges and spoons. It's yeah, and I'm glad you're bringing awareness about it and like having that, because I do think it is one of those things that should be talked about and more known in the mainstream so people can understand that.
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
I also wanted to talk, so on your link tree you have 2 different petitions. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about each one of those and like what led you to start it, or if you didn't start it, like what is your interest in having them, like why is it important, you think?
I am not actually too sure which ones are on there right now, because I changed them quite recently.
That's fair.
Um, I will have a look.
Yeah.
I've got the medical gaslighting one on there. That's a really important one to me. And then the petition to get endometriosis registered as a disability. Um, neither of those were started by me. I just want to clarify that they're just petitions I've linked that I find important to raise awareness for. So the medical gaslighting one, that is a huge thing. If you scroll through my Instagram, that's a major theme. I'm always talking about medical gaslighting and how it needs to stop. It's something that affects all chronically ill and disabled people, and also people who don't fall under that bracket. If affects too many people. It's something I could speak about forever, how awful medical gaslighting is, and just needs to stop. I would share every petition there is, but I don't think it honestly helps.
Yeah, I do think it is a very fundamental issue that's a thing. And for people unaware, gaslighting is a term that comes from some story about this husband trying to make his wife believe like that she was not fully sane and like question her reality by like saying, oh, you left the gas light on, even though she had turned it off. He would turn it on and be like, oh, you see, and stuff. So in the medical sense, this is more, and you can definitely clarify if I'm getting this wrong or if you feel like there's something I missed, but like for medical gaslighting, having people be like, oh, that's not really a thing, being very dismissive, very much not taking an account when you're like, hey, I brought this issue up to you before. And then later on, they're like, wow, I can't believe you never mentioned this. And it's like, well, I have. And it's really frustrating because you feel like, you're trying to figure it out and you're dealing with these professionals who seem like may not act in the way like, that they believe you and that they're trying to work there with you. It can often feel like an uphill battle just to get basic medical care.
Yeah, you've explained it perfectly there.
And then could you talk about the other petition you have currently up about getting endometriosis registered as a disability in the UK?
Yeah, that one was started by somebody called Ray. She has a chronic illness community Instagram. She raises amazing awareness around endometriosis and adenomyosis. I can't say the second one. Um, it's not something I've been formally diagnosed with, but it's suspected. My mum has it, so it's something that I see a big impact, and it affects people. Like it is a disability, and the fact that it isn't seen as one is kind of ridiculous. Women have to go, not just women, any people have to go through multiple surgeries, end up having hysterectomies just to cure this condition, and it doesn't even cure it. So it's a disability. It's something that affects people so majorly, and the fact that it's not seen as one, or it's just seen as a bad period, is just shocking to me.
Yeah, and I do think that that's also part of sometimes can be also seen in medical gaslighting, that AFAB people who may have endometriosis or other conditions that like cause extremely painful periods will often be like, told, oh, well, everything hurts, but like there's a difference between this is normal cramping and like having a period for like multiple days on end, like for longer than normal, and every single day being so much pain that it's hard to function. Like I do think that I think that also plays a role in it, is that in general there's a lot of dismissiveness around periods. And so even though it is very troubling, and it is, like you said, it's not just a bad period. So yeah, I do think that's also really important for people to recognize, and the UK to have that as a disability, because that's not something that just goes away easily or anything like that.
No, definitely. It's in the UK, it's not something that is really known about. There's not many specialist clinics for it at all. Most of the operations are just held by general gynecologists rather than a specialized endosurgeon. So that's another thing, that there needs to be more awareness around that condition for so many reasons, not just for the fact that it needs to be classed as a disability, the fact that there's so many layers of it being a disability.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, definitely so. Sorry, I have a list of questions I'm going off.
Okay.
Sure. So one of the things that you've shown and talked about somewhat on your account was various things with mobility aids. So I was wondering if you could maybe say, like, do you think are some things that people don't really know, or in the mainstream don't know, or don't really believe about mobility aids, that you feel like are important to share and for people to like understand?
Well, the biggest one is that young people can use them, and that you don't have to be paralyzed to be in one. And there's so many misconceptions around using mobility aids. the paralyzed section, that was obviously referring to a wheelchair.
Yeah.
But any mobility aid in general, you don't have to be of a certain age. You don't have to have a certain condition to use it. If it helps you, use it. Like I'm so passionate about that as well. Just if it's going to help you, don't let yourself suffer. um I've accepted mobility aids into my life pretty easily, I would say. I think buying a bright pink wheelchair pretty helped.
Yeah.
It helped, yeah, because people are going to look at me either way with bright orange hair. So have a bright pink wheelchair as well, and and another thing with getting to use a walking stick, which is how I started with mobility aids. I used to match my outfits up to the stick. It was floral pattern, so that was really helpful in getting comfortable with the aid as well. I just think that there's so many misconceptions around using them. Um, I do have a post on my Instagram where we think about mobility aids not being for just the elderly. That's something I stand by a lot. It's when they're advertised, it's always wheelchairs for the elderly, walking sticks for the elderly, and it's like it's not just for the elderly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's important. I want to like clarify that. I guess answering a sort of follow-up question is that for other young people who may just now, or like be getting into using mobility aids or thinking about it, like that you feel having some personalization with it like helped you do that, because again, as you said, there's a lot of stigma. So I guess I was trying to say like recommending like personalization things for people.
Yeah, that is a big thing. Like I said, just dressing to match your mobility aid or having one that's in a colour you like. I've seen people spray paint their wheelchairs and they look amazing and all sorts of things. And just, I think that just can make you feel so much more comfortable knowing that it's personalised to you. It doesn't feel like just, yeah, a mobility object. It's yours. It's a part of you. That's how I see it anyways.
Yeah, and I think that very much is fair. Sort of on the topic of mobility aids, what do you feel specifically being in the UK, about like accessibility to places with mobility aids like a wheelchair? Do you feel like have you found that those are hard to find in the UK, or are they pretty prominent, or
um, so they're not cheap is the first thing. We do have obviously services like the NHS which offer wheelchairs, but it's month-long waiting lists, and I believe at the end you only get given a voucher of £350 to go towards the cost of the wheelchair. It's something that I'm looking into at the minute because my wheelchair is self-propelled, but the current state of my condition, I need an electric wheelchair.
Mhm.
But the NHS isn't a way to go with the waiting list being so long, and the pricing of a wheelchair is, as you probably know, not cheap.
Yeah.
It's not easily accessible. Definitely not.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And then in terms of like physical location, so you feel like there's ramps or other ways to access buildings easily, or do you think that there's most of the architecture doesn't really support that?
I can't really speak majorly because I don't leave my house too often, but trains are awful. They will help you on with a ramp and they'll say somebody will meet you at the other end, and then nobody's there and you're stuck on the train.
Oh god.
I'm really thankful that obviously I've usually got someone with me, and my brother, he's strong, he just picks my chair and me and just takes it off the train. But if I didn't have him, I would be stuck on that train and probably be miles away from my home. So, and then obviously we have the underground system as well. That is not accessible at all. Lifts are not in hardly any of the stations. You have to climb escalators and hundreds of stairs. The few times I have been to use it, I've had to get out my wheelchair and carry it up with me. So it's not the greatest. The most trouble I've had is in transport, I would say, in transportation, but most venues and places, I would say they're quite accessible and helpful. Definitely.
I mean, yeah, the transportation thing really sucks because that's very important for getting around, but I'm glad that hopefully some of the buildings in the UK are trying and are making it accessible through that way, because that's and I'm sure that's an issue in a lot of places, but I know that's an issue in the US where it's like, oh, this is a slightly older building, so we will not pay for anything. So you can't, if you have something on the second floor, kinda not.
Yeah, it's awful. There was one time that I remember I went to a restaurant and they said there was wheelchair access and showed up and there was stairs on both of the doors in and I was like, where's the wheelchair access then? So yeah, it's sometimes misleading.
Yeah, which I think is also frustrating because if you're like, "Hey, I need to plan in advance to make sure like this is somewhere I can go," and then they don't have somewhere for you to go, it is, I can imagine, really frustrating and upsetting.
Yeah, I don't know whether you have this system in America either, of a radar key. So in the UK we have disabled toilets, public toilets, but they're often locked, so they're not actually accessible at all. You have to buy yourself a radar key online. They're cheap, but it's not the most accessible option because the toilets are locked half of the time. I don't own one, so most of the time when I need to use a disabled toilet, I've got to find the next one. They're always locked, especially during this pandemic. Obviously, they're locked more than ever.
I That is not something that I'm aware of, is in the US, and that's not great. I think,
No, definitely not.
like, I mean, and I guess this can be a sort of question and stuff, but something I know is that I feel like a lot of times, like, do you feel like that a lot of the ways when people are like, "Oh, we wanna make sure, only people who actually need this get this," that some of those sometimes when they go about that, it actually hurts disabled people more than it helps them?
Definitely, yeah, because not everybody will have access to that key. So, I mean, most venues, I think they do hold one maybe behind the what they're wherever they're running it, like behind the bar or wherever you are. Um, Sometimes they'll have a spare one, but it's usually reliant on the disabled person to have this key with them and be able to access the toilets themselves. But it's not the best way to work things at all.
No, because again, it's something that non-disabled people don't have to do. Non-disabled people don't have to be like, "Did I buy the thing? Am I gonna have it on my person? Is it going to not take forever so I can, like," so, like,
Exactly.
that's frustrating to hear.
Yeah, it is quite frustrating.
Um, so, you talked about various things of how, like, disability is addressed in the UK and various things. Is there, something we've not yet talked about that you feel like specifically in the UK, is an issue in terms of, how they handle disability or how people think about disability?
Um, I would definitely say it's, yeah, a problem. I don't know if you saw my recent post on Instagram. I was speaking about a documentary that was aired in the UK, based around our disability benefit system. They ended the documentary with a statistic of, I think it was around, gosh, 60% of the public had said that they felt disabled people were a burden on society. And, that's just awful to hear. Nobody should think that at all. So I think that sums it up, just saying that statistic.
Yeah, so that would be because did see this on your link tree. That would be the Truth About Disability benefits. Um,
Yeah.
Dispatches documentary. I mean, yeah, that is awful. Like, disabled people are not a burden. They're people too who, like, deserve to just get to live. Like, you know,
Yeah. So the fact that it was such a high percent of people thinking that is shocking.
yeah, that is upsetting. Um, and so, sort of similar question in the media, is there things you specifically feel? I mean, there's a lot. But are there things specifically you feel you see a lot, or specifically upset you that are like in the way they portray disability or talk about disability?
I think there are quite a lot of issues in the media with it, especially in the UK. I'm constantly seeing things pop up of people saying, "Oh, these people have said this about disability," and everyone's so shocked because it's just not the thing to be saying. Like most recently, it was Lorraine from a TV show in the UK. She spent the day with a load of other celebrities. Um, in a wheelchair. They spent 24 hours in a wheelchair to see how it felt so they could live the disabled lives. And so again, that kind of just says how it's treated in the media over here. It's we're not really treated as people.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
frustrating because yeah, disability is definitely not a costume, and it is like, again,
Yeah, it's not something to try on. It's what we have to live with day in, day out.
yeah, like I definitely think doing, because I think I had seen a little bit on that a while back about like celebrities in wheelchairs. Like the fact is, even just like one day in a wheelchair, like that's not going to tell you what it's like to actually be disabled and to actually use a wheelchair on a like regular basis. And let's be fair, to not be a celebrity who's doing it for a stunt, because there's got to be a lot different treatment. If you're a celebrity being like,
Yeah.
oh, I just want to see what it's like, then like they're getting all the help and whatever, versus if you're not, they might be like, you know, again, where people aren't accessible or they lie about the accessibility of like their venues and stuff, which is like that's not something they can experience. Like they just can't understand the ableism. And so it is very frustrating to see when people are like, this is just a cool fun thing.
Yeah. Just try it on for the day and then be over with it. But that's not the case for us.
Yeah, yeah. So this is completely different, but I wanted to ask, what other advice you have for, you know, other chronically ill people or spoonies, especially younger people who may only just start being in the community or start, you know, understand like maybe starting getting a first diagnosis or noticing that this is like having some sort of like having the symptoms become a bigger part of their life.
um, Firstly, if you're looking for that diagnosis, don't give up. That's the biggest thing. I know how hard it is to fight and just to want to be heard, but feel like you're talking to a brick wall. Just don't give up on that. Like I said, I feel like my mitochondrial disorder thing has been going on since I was 8 years old. I'm 20 now. I'm only getting to the answers. So you can't give up. You'll get there eventually, no matter how long it does take. A chronic illness is something that can vary throughout your life as well. I've had a chronic fatigue syndrome diagnosis, and now that doesn't feel relevant at all to me. Um, it's just and that so yeah, don't give up on your diagnosis. Keep fighting for what you feel is right. You know your body best. And the second one would be find your community, find your people who understand, because that's been the biggest help to me, is finding friends who I can speak to who just get chronic illness, and I don't need to explain when I haven't replied for a few days, because they just know I'm napping, I'm recovering, I'm having a flare up. And it's finding those people who just get it, because that's the support you're going to need.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's all really good advice to hear, you know, because it is true that like I know I'm still relatively new in like my journey with like chronic illness and stuff like that. And I do know that, especially in the beginning, it is very frustrating and isolating when it's like chronic pain and chronic illness in general is really hard to relate to if people don't have it themselves and stuff.
Definitely.
And it's definitely hard when you don't have a diagnosis, you know, and I'll agree, like it can be really hard. And that, like, you know, because yeah, it's taken me a while too. Like there's been various symptoms of specifically like my fibromyalgia for like many years, and it only took till like, you know, little less than a year ago for me to actually get that diagnosis and stuff. And like, you know, because it is frustrating, and part of that is the medical gaslighting and stuff. But like I do also agree that it is important to show to people that like, you know, like it can be really hard now, but like diagnosis is not necessarily impossible. I mean, it can be really hard for some people, and some people like like getting that official diagnosis is going to be a lot more difficult. But like if that is something you really seek and want to need, I do think, yeah, ramble, sorry.
It's okay. No, I completely get that. Another thing I would say is going back to mobility aids, just don't be afraid of them if you're new to the chronically ill community. If you feel they're going to help you, use them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And it doesn't matter if you're new to your diagnosis or years into it, nobody can tell you that you don't need that mobility aid. You know your body best, so do what's best for you.
Yeah, yeah, that is also very important. Also slightly unrelated, but so like you said, your Instagram account documents your health journey, and so part of that includes you'll talk about like staying in hospitals. I was wondering if you have advice, one, for people who may be new to having hospital stays as a thing in their life, especially as a young person, like what advice you have from there. And then two, what are things you feel like, and this might go in the advice things, but like what are things you think are the most important or most helpful that you might like bring or have in a go bag for you, like when you are going to the hospital?
The second one, I always have a bag packed just in case. Always have an emergency hospital bag packed. I think the only thing that I throw in is my phone charger and my phone at the last minute. Other than that, it's literally just clothes. But if I'm inpatient, being kept in the hospital, I usually like to have my crochet with me, do a bit of crochet, keeps me distracted in there. The first one, sorry, could you repeat the question?
No, you're good. Yeah, it was a lot of words. Of what advice might you have for people who, are new to having hospital stays, related to a chronic illness or various things like that?
Um, it's not an easy thing at all to adjust to. It is traumatic being in and out of hospital. Um, Again, going back to find your people, have those people you can message who have been there, who know what it's like, who you can just say, I'm in hospital, you guys know how I'm feeling, distract me, or what do you do in this position? I've asked that on my Instagram story before and had suggestions flood in of people saying, listen to music, talk to the people on the ward, go for a walk if you can on the ward. Just small things to distract yourself, and do take your comforts in with you. Like I said, I've got a bag packed up, but I'm always wearing my dressing gown when I leave, so that's a big comfort for me to have that on me. Yeah, just have home items with you in hospital if you can. Have the people you get there to call for support. It's not nice being in hospital at all. That's all I can say. But yeah, I guess I'm not really the greatest person to answer because I haven't had the best hospital stays. They've all been quite traumatic, but just try and get through it the best you can, because there's always going to be light at the end. You're always going to, no matter how long it feels like you're trapped in that hospital ward, you will get out eventually.
Yeah.
You'll breathe fresh air again, and you'll get back to your own bed.
I mean, I think it is important to talk about it, even having like traumatic experiences, because to be fair, I think a lot of people like like you said, going in and out of hospitals in general, like that is traumatizing. And like, again, because sadly, there are a lot of people in the medical field who may like do medical gaslighting or have their own views that can be harmful. Like, I do think it is also important, like, not to scare people away from hospitals, but like understanding that with hospitals and medical care, like there are some great people, but there's also a lot of not great people, and that it can be hard, but like to know that, and that's not a judgment on them, because there will be like there's always going to be people who are not doing their job properly, or like have their beliefs like interfering in doing such a thing.
No, definitely.
So uh yeah, I think that's all the questions I have. I'm looking, trying to scan my brain. I mean, I don't know. Is there anything else like you think you'd like to talk about that we haven't touched on that you think?
Uh, I was going to say something in reply to what you was just saying about the hospital stays and the I've forgotten what I was going to say though, so give me a
Oh,
second.
you're good.
So with the gaslighting and stuff in hospitals, that is a big traumatic thing for people. And like you said, there are those hospital stays that can be good with good doctors, good nurses, good people taking care of you, treating you nicely, but it can still not be a nice experience because you're being prodded and poked. They're invading your privacy. Your health kind of becomes you. It's it's not a nice thing to think about, but that's how hospital feels to me. Even if a stay is good, it can still be painful. Like it can still leave a mental effect, I suppose. So going back to always have that support when you're in hospital, it's so important just to have people to message and things to distract you whilst you're in there.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think that's
oh yeah, I was just gonna say like that does sound really good, and that is like I think really good advice and good for people to know. And like even outside of hospitals, there are good and bad doctors. Like it can be really hard, but like there are good people and there are good doctors and stuff. And like I guess I also want to like preface like this is not saying that like I think it's very valid for a lot of people to be wary of the medical field and to be wary of that. Like that's 100% understandable. But knowing that there are some good people out there and stuff. Like I know the person who diagnosed me with fibromyalgia, like she was like such an amazing person, and then she left, and so now my new doctor there is a quack.
oh gosh, no, that's horrible.
It's okay. I'm moving to someone else. I only have to see her one more time, and then we're just not.
I hope the new doctor works out for you.
Yeah, yeah. He's supposed to like he mostly does research on fibromyalgia and stuff, which is
Yep.
great. Instead of because like fibromyalgia is in that joint weird like area between neurology, rheumatology, and stuff. And the doctor I have, I don't know, she was like, well, if you just did the exercise, your pain could be gone. And I was like, well, that's not exactly how that works. All my studies show that like you can help pain, but like to try to be like, sure, if you just do 30 minutes of cardio, boom, no more fibromyalgia. Like then a lot more people would not have fibromyalgia.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, which I do think is a thing also is that a lot of times with chronic illnesses that there's a lot of unsolicited advice. So while this is not something we really talked about, I do also think important to mention. Fun fact, please don't give unsolicited advice. I can speak maybe advice to like chronically ill people and stuff about like what you think will help them because again, you don't know. And trust me, every single one of us has heard of kale and heard of exercise. Like it's not a new thing. We know it exists. It's just not helpful for you to be like, well,
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. I think that's something that I've really tried to avoid with my Instagram account. There's kind of that line between when you're raising awareness around certain conditions and then pushing it over of giving people unsolicited advice. I try to really avoid that and fear I'm accidentally doing that. It's just something that obviously I've had happen to me and I haven't liked, so I wouldn't want to accidentally do that to somebody else.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that is fair. Like I do think, you know, yeah, words. But like, yeah, I do think it is fair. And I think I've not seen anything on your account that made me feel like, oh, you're like really pressing me to do this or that. Like I feel yeah, I feel like talking about your journey and like I think that is fine. And you might be like, for me, this is helpful, but like understanding this is a me thing. This isn't gonna apply to everyone and stuff. I think it's important to understand that and stuff. I think the biggest problem is again when you have non-disabled people or specifically non-chronically ill people who just don't understand the concept of like what it means to have a chronic illness. Like a lot of them don't understand it's chronic for a reason. Like that's not just, they didn't just tack that on for no good reason. Like there's a reason for that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Uh, other than that, I think that's all I have. It's great. I'm
Okay.
sure often. So yeah, if that's the case. Thank you for speaking with me and sharing with me and viewers in the future. Uh, it's really nice to talk to you. And I definitely will put the petitions we mentioned in the links to them in the description, as well as the link to the documentary you talked about the disability benefits in the UK. And again, you should check out their account. It's at Tangerine Spoonie on Instagram. I don't know if you have other social media.
Just the Instagram. I have a TikTok.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Want to make sure I was not missing anything, because otherwise,
It's been lovely to speak to you too. Thank you for
yeah,
having me.
thank you.